Oneofus.net is sponsored by Circle Brewing Company.
In the woods today, LA discovered a charming little landmark.
The Pet Cemetery.
So the final movie of South by Southwest this year was the remake of Pet Sematary, which I'm not sure anyone was actively calling for, but
Well, you know what? If you're gonna remake a movie, you should pick one that was not that good.
People loved the book when it came out. I remember I was like, I was of the age where Stephen King, you read every new Stephen King that came out. I read it and was like, really? This is the one everybody thinks is so great? I mean, it's fine. It's not like the Tommyknockers or something where it's like, that was a waste of my time. But this new version gets the guys who directed a real breakout horror film. Directors Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer, who made the movie Starry Eyes. If anything led me to this remake going, well, the original wasn't that great. Maybe it's like, I always say, don't remake great movies, remake mediocre movies that had a good chance of having something good there. And then you've got, what's his name? Airplane Monster on the Wing guy. John Lithgow. Why can't I remember his name?
He's one of my favorite character actors. I will give something a chance if I find out he's in it.
In this one, we have Jason Clarke playing the dad of the family. And the wife is played by Amy Seimetz, who you might remember from a couple different things, but probably most recently she plays a prominent role in the TV adaptation of Get Shorty. So they've moved from the city to the country because they want to spend more time with their kids. They've got a big old, impossibly, expensive house, like out in the country. And everything seems like it's going to be great.
It actually, to me, does not.
No?
That whole setup, I look at and go, does this ever work out?
Everything seems more or less fine, but there's a big road right in front of their house where trucks go down at like 60 miles an hour, which is right off the bat, like, seriously, no one is going to, it's like a little country road. There's no speed limit. There's nothing.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a problem with that.
Well, yes, because these aren't really good parents. And they're the kind of terrible parents that don't teach their kids, hey, don't run in the street.
Yes.
a basic lesson that most parents that I know teach their kids.
You feel like this is something that should have come up early on in the movie, but then you'd have no movie.
They knew the power of that place. They feared it. Those woods belong to something else.
All right, so the upshot of this is they got a cat named Church. Weird name for a cat, but they say it's short for Winston Churchill, so I'll give them points for that. Yeah. And the cat dies from said traffic, and they're like, oh, our daughter's going to be devastated. What are we going to do? And Judd Crandall, who strangely is played with zero enthusiasm or caricature by John Lithgow here.
Yeah, all that praise that we gave John Lithgow in the beginning, all right, well, it doesn't count here.
Yeah, he's just in this for a check is what it seems like. And he's like, well, let's go bury it in the nearby pet cemetery, which for some reason we see earlier in the film a bunch of kids wearing creepy masks and banging a drum, taking a pet to be buried, which never
got explained.
Never has anything to do with
anything. It's a cool visual.
Yeah.
And even at the screening that we went to, they had some kids do that while we were standing in line, just to make everybody go, what's that about?
Ultimately, the pet cemetery itself is not the problem. There's this huge, what do you call it, like giant hill of
barrier
of broken
limbs and wood.
Yeah, that's around it. And the idea is because on the other side of it, once you go far enough, and boy, it's a bit of a voyage. It
is.
There's a Micmac, which they're not as specific about in this movie, but Indian burial ground that is, as we see in some of the dreams, the ground is Sawa.
Because you're right, they weren't specific about that at all.
Yeah, in the book, in the previous movie, it goes into a little bit more detail, but the idea is you bury something in there, it will come back to life. The problem is it comes back to life and it's never the same, which Judd unhelpfully forgets to mention.
It's a very elaborate monkey's paw story, pretty much.
They bury the cat there. Cat comes back to life, except now it's the way that Martin feels about most cats, which is that they're horrible and deserve to be destroyed.
that was hilarious to me. How it's like everybody's going like, oh no, the cat's evil now. I'm like, No, now the cat's a cat.
But you're like, you sit on this for quite a while in the film,
yeah.
with a lot of just creepy moments that have to do with the ghost teenager with the Bastion head appearing to him, warning him.
It plays a lot off of Jason Clarke. He's a doctor, being a man of science, who's suddenly seeing all these supernatural visions.
So eventually it comes down to, as you probably know by now, because this thing has been around in one form or another for quite a long time, one of the kids dies. And here's where, in the third act, the movie finally breaks away from the previous source material and the previous film and starts to tell kind of a different story, or at least in a different way than it did. And this is the point where I actually started to wake up and pay attention a bit, because it does get genuinely kind of creepy. It definitely is much more into a gothy, so almost British Hammer horror atmosphere with lots of fog and creaking trees and stuff that I thought was just a lot more stylish, a lot more interesting than the relatively banal original film. But the fact that the story does go some different places with it, I mean, just by the nature of this very different thing that happens in the plot right at the top of the third act, you're in for some very different type of storytelling that's going to happen to wrap this thing up. And it goes to a pretty dark place by the end, but I really appreciated that. I still think the first 2/3 of this movie are kind of suffer from that. Why are you remaking this? What is the point? This is the same movie. To, oh wait, okay, this part is good.
I'm so the opposite.
Okay.
And I can tell that it's based on the fact that I never saw the original or read the book.
Okay.
So I had no expectations about anything. And I thought at least for the first half, if not first 2/3, that it was effective at being creepy, but kind of humorous in a way. You're like, okay. And just scenes of the cat. It would just cut to the cat just looking like this with his fur all matted and wet and chunks out of it. And you just kind of laugh at, but not in that like, haha, that's so stupid, but just how ironic it is that this cat is here looking that way. And there's several moments like that. I found it very entertaining, and I was like, you know what, man, I'm really digging this. I mean, I don't know what it did before, but I like this, and there's some acknowledgement of the humor. But when it gets into the third act, I and the rest of the audience were laughing even more, but it was less about how, all right, I see what you're doing there, and more about how this is all really ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really goddamn ridiculous.
It's a movie full of people making choices that are so stupid and so obviously dumb. Making such bad choices that there's a point you're like, I just don't have any sympathy for you anymore.
No, none whatsoever.
You're so dumb. Everyone makes terrible choices. And there's an undertone through both the original story and through both of the movies that King is obviously trying to say some things and work some shit out. And that works better in a literary format than it does in a film format, quite frankly.
I realized, like, man, so many of his stories have a dad who's just not good at his job.
Yeah, or sometimes it turns into the very villain.
Yeah, it turns into the villain.
Yeah.
And it's like, The Shining is the classic example. And so when watching it here, like, all right, dude, you hate your dad. I get it. And it doesn't help that, man, I don't think of Jason Clarke as a bad actor, and yet I never quite buy him.
He is supposed to reach some pretty heavy emotional heights, and I just never really buy it.
Yeah, because we just don't know all that much about him before it starts. Yeah, I mean, it's not like the movie's short, but it feels a little rushed. It's I guess the original was campy.
Yeah.
So it's paying some homage to that. But I wouldn't really call it campy. I don't know. It's a hard movie to judge.
It's an absurd story from the get-go, so I can't even really as much blame the directors. I mean, what are you going to do?
Right. What can you do?
I think overall, I give this movie a lot of points for upgrade in style. In fact, I would recommend this movie much more than the original if you were looking for an adaptation of the book. I think overall, a much better filmed version of the book. But it's still just okay, and because there's only so much you can do to... I'm not going to say polish a turd. The book's not terrible, but, fix something that I think was that inherently broken in the first place.
Yeah. I think it's an entertaining movie, but not necessarily a good one. And I give them props on... I feel like it's one of those movies where they had a relatively small budget and did a lot with that budget.
Yes.
I mean, to have so few actors, they got a lot going on.
But yeah, problems with the acting choices, problems with the original plot. What are you going to do? But I will be very anxious to see what these directors do next.
Yeah.
Sometimes dead is better.
Oneofus.net is sponsored by Circle Brewing Company, located in Austin, Texas at 2340 West Breaker Lane, Suite B. You can go visit them there at their both brew pub and brewery and try a lot of their seasonals that they have there, or you can get their beers in various stores around town and even, from what I'm told, outside of Texas. Please check out Circle Brewery and their many fine craft beers, sponsor of Oneofus.net.